them, they don't have to be like completely dry, but if you don't let them at least get mostly dry, it's hell to pay. It's almost like trying to use a dry erase marker over another dry erase marker. You know how like you almost erase what you do every single time. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But I figured since while that's doing that, it's gonna paint the bottom of this here. This mug is like ginormous. I've heard people's pleas of, you know, please do bigger mugs. And it's not that I necessarily don't try to do bigger mugs. I always do mugs that I think are going to be large. But one of the white clays I've been using, and I honestly didn't realize this, and oops, that's bad on my part. One of them has like a 14% shrink rate. So it's like I thought that I was throwing these huge mugs. Like I was like, oh, these are going to be at least like 16, 18 ounces. And I would fire them and then they would be like 8 to 12 ounces. Like I think with my last sale I did, the biggest stein I got out of all of those was maybe a 14 or a 16. I could be lying. I can't remember exactly, but and I'm just like, what the heck? So I finally like looked on their actual website and they do have shrink rulers you can buy, but I'm a savage and I'm like slowly investing in things. But yeah, like I had no clue that the shrink rate was that high on that one particular clay. So that's why my mugs haven't been that big. So I threw some really big honking ones this time, like absurdly big, because I know that probably by the time I fire them and all that, they're not going to be as absurd anymore. So yeah, and I want people to, it's really disappointing when people are like, I really want this mug, but it's not big enough. And it's like, well, darn. So trying to please everyone around here. I personally like smaller mugs because I don't drink my coffee super quick. But I know apparently some people like, shoot, I feel like I need to make a straw for some of y'all the way you drink coffee. You just guzzle it down real quick. No judgments here. Whatever. So I got that painted on. I'll let it dry and maybe do another layer later. But after the next, probably after I do the light green and the chartreuse on this, I'm going to actually go back in and define like the hair, like carve that out with my carving tool, and a little bit more of like where the jacket and the hat and the fuzz, all that is from the collar, just to give him a little bit more life. And I'll kind of try to walk through that slowly. I feel like it turns out different every time I do it, but we'll do it to it, see what happens. Okay, so I've got all my layers of paint on. I am going to end up doing another layer of the chartreuse after I carve some of this out. I'm just going to let it dry a little bit before I do another layer. More layers you do, it's going to, of course, take longer to dry. And I've done about 4 layers so far. So we'll go into... Can't use that tool. I gotta replace we'll start with this. Let's do some of the finer details. And they have already became hard to see, of course, but that's okay. And that's what I'll kind of still use my guide down here for looking at, seeing where those lines are supposed to be. I do kind of towards the end. And I already know, I'm not going to outline the whole nose probably because I already know that this is the area that's going to be dark and half of it stays kind of that light color. I think the biggest takeaway from this, and I know I said it in my other video too, is like just learning these underglaze colors, what they do on the clay that you use, what they do when layered together, what they do when they're painted on heavy versus painted on lightly, things like that. Because it's really not something you can teach, it's just something that you have to kind of experiment with on your own. So yeah, so as you can see, I left the mouth here. I left this is the only part of the clay like that I haven't painted yet, because I already know it's going to be pink, so no point in having to go back in and redo it. Now I did mean to paint this, that's called the sclera of the eye, but I did mean to paint it with the chartreuse, but I'm using the chartreuse again anyway, so it's fine. I did the iris, this dark green, the dark green color, and I'm gonna go back in and redo it some just now that it's more pinpointed. And I'll do an actual pupil with black, but as for the sclera, I've been doing them just chartreuse. So I'm definitely having to refer to my picture because I didn't want it to take as long, so I didn't do as many lines as I typically do, to show how this is done. And I definitely think I'll have to go back through and probably look at my more detailed places once it's all said and done here, just to make sure. Because I had it in my head the other day, like when I was initially going to do this, because I had just completed one, and now I'm kind of like fuzzy headed on it, and I'm like, so. We know that this is his fur, so go in here, and those aren't gonna be, and that's why when you're outlining it, I wouldn't do like super definite lines, because then those are gonna show up when you just slightly do them. It's not too late to kind of work through them and make them look like they're supposed to. I'm not really sure the proper way to do hair. I just know what I typically do is I'll go through and I'll like make the lines, in the pattern that they're supposed to be in, with the direction the hair is supposed to go in. And then like at the end, I'll go back through and like water down a color and fill in the lines, which you could do that using wax too at the end, if that's how you want to do. But because I'm already like using the color, I don't think it'll really matter if I completely wax it. And that's just an extra step that, I don't know, man. Like, I've not had luck with my waxes here lately. They've kind of just looked like crap, if I'm being honest. I've gotten a couple different brands, and it's like they all just get hard super quick no matter what, and they never work like they're supposed to once they're opened, if that makes any sense. Okay, so I've showed you enough of the little fur. I'll come back and do this myself in a little bit. The big thing is coming back with, your main one, and you're going to use your smaller tool to make finer hair too in the end, but I'm just kind of trying to give the definite lines right now for actual painting purposes. And this was a line I had made to show where his fur cap starts. As you can see, he's kind of starting to come to life now. And his hair for his cap's going to be kind of coming up because the cap fur is actually going to be kind of like meshing into it. So once I get the white painted here, I'll do the same thing. I'll kind of work lines down going into it so you can kind of see where the hair and the cap meet each other. And then those little curly cues here, those little furry curlies. And same with like, this is his cap, and we know that the red part, we don't have to worry about showing like fur on it because it's not furry. It's just going to be like a straight line. And then of course this is the little furry piece on the end of the cap. I'm of course always open to questions. I'm working the next few days, so I'm usually not as active on here. But I'm definitely trying to like work on stuff before work, basically because of how far behind I am. Really kind of stretch